Hi, my name's Penny, and I have posted on booktube for quite a while now, so this is probably going to feel super awkward for me, probably no difference for you because I'm probably always awkward. Basically, work just got real crazy at the end of the year because I was finishing up my job, and so I decided not to do it. I actually thought I'd just skipped my November and December wrap up, but I see that I didn't do anything at the end of October either. So today I'm going to talk about the books that I read at the end of October, November and December, which I think is about 25 books. So I need to be quick, but I do want to say, hi, it's nice to be back. So for those of you who've watched my channel before, you might notice I have a slightly different hair color. The reason for that is that I always used to have really fun hair colors, but then recently for my work I've kind of had to stick with the norm a little bit more. This year I'm actually planning to take a year off work, which means that I can go back to kind of my natural hair colors. Also, hopefully it means that I'll be able to read lots of books. But firstly, let's talk about these ones that I finished off last year. I did think about just not doing this video, but like, I'm such a completionist, I have to do it. So we're gonna do it. But I'll have to be brief, she says after talking for a very long time. So the first book that I read in this time period of missing booktube was Doe Burns by Holly Black. I think I actually planned to read this during the spookathon, but then I ran out of time. It's a story that follows this boy, and these, I have to say, these synopses are not going to be very good because some of them I don't really remember. But this boy, he likes to play with dolls with his two best friends who are girls, and they create stories together. But this is a middle grade story, so they're kind of getting, I think, to about the age of 11 or something, and suddenly he's feeling a lot of judgment from like his friend group at school and also from his father to stop playing with dolls. But there's also this other doll that perhaps has a ghost in it, maybe, and he ends up going on this like journey with his friends to put this doll's remains to rest. So I did really enjoy the part of the story that was looking at this boy wanting to play with dolls even though it's frowned upon, but the rest of it was a little bit simple. I mean, it was middle grade. I'm definitely not the target market for middle grade, so it was alright, nothing amazing. But if you want a middle grade story that looks at those kind of gender norm things, then this was a good one. I listened to it on audiobook, and the audiobook was okay. So the next book I also listened to on audiobook, and that was Stranger and Stranger, which is the second book in the Emily the Strange series by Rob Rieger. So I really like Emily Strange's aesthetic, and I had the first book in the series from a while ago, which I read and I thought it was okay. Again, it's quite middle grade, so very simple. And then I wanted to kind of continue the series. I'm not really sure why. I think, again, because I'm a completionist. So when I saw the audiobook for this, I thought, well, that's an easy way to do it. At the time, I had a really long commute. I am probably going to listen to less audiobooks now that I don't have such a ridiculously long commute. But anyway, I listened to the story. It was a bit weird listening to it compared to reading it because I don't really think it's formatted in a way that fits well with audiobook format. There's a lot of lists and also like laughter written out in a way that sounds really weird when the narrator's saying it. But it's a fun story. So also during this period, I listened to the last 3 stories in the Wrinkle in Time Quintet. I listened to the last 3 books. To be honest, sometimes being a completionist is a pain in the butt. This was essentially just Bible fan fiction. I didn't mind it. I think actually maybe the 3rd one was okay. I really like Wrinkle in Time when it's like really nonsensical and ridiculous and fun, and it's all about the characters learning stuff. But several of these books really goes into just other people's stories. It's not even following the original children anymore. And like the twins go back and they spend a bunch of time with Noah and the angels and the demons, and it's just bizarre and unnecessary and honestly Bible fan fiction. So maybe if Bible fan fiction is something you think you would like, then maybe you'd enjoy these. But I just was waiting for them to end most of the time I was listening to it. Alright, so then I did read something much better, which is Magic Slays by Alona Andrews. This is the 5th book in the Kate Daniels series, and I do think that, let me just look at my list, I did read another 2 books in this series during the period as well. Kate Daniels is one of my favorite series. I just love her. She's like this kick-ass mercenary with magical abilities in a world where magic has started to come back, but it comes back in waves. So sometimes magic works, sometimes technology works, and it's very unpredictable. There's shapeshifters and vampires and all sorts of mythological creatures. In fact, what I really enjoy about this series is how all the different mythologies from all over the world are brought into the story. I'm going to be talking a lot more about this series this year because the 10th and final book just came out. The reason I was reading these is I wanted to reread all the books up to that final one, so I was as ready to enjoy the final one as possible. I am currently reading the 8th one, so I'm really close. So if you want to hear more about what I thought about that series, it will definitely be in my January wrap-up. Then I read The Boy on the Bridge by Emma Carey, which is the sequel to The Girl with All the Gifts. The Girl with All the Gifts was the story where it starts out, there's this girl, she's in a cell, she's strapped to a wheelchair. Every day with guns pointed at her, they wheel her out into the classroom where there's a whole bunch of other children in a similar situation. It's very mysterious about what's going on at first. Eventually it becomes very action-packed, but what I really like about this series, and both The Girl with All the Gifts and The Boy on the Bridge, is that it really has such realistic characters, and I love following along with their thoughts. I think it's quite a good analysis of how different people react in stressful situations. Also, one of the main characters in The Boy on the Bridge is an autistic boy. In fact, I think he's the boy on the bridge. And honestly, I loved him so much. I loved a lot of the characters, even the ones that were not very nice. And I also really enjoyed its analysis of where humanity is going as a species and what might happen to us. Honestly, I think I've only seen this mentioned a couple of times on booktube, maybe even less. But when Girl with All the Gifts came out, everyone was talking about it, so I don't know why none of you are reading this. Like, you should read it. So then also at the beginning of October, I'd done the Get Graphic Readathon where I read a bunch of graphic novels, and there were a bunch that I didn't get to during that readathon that I wanted to. So at the start of November, I decided I was going to do my own little graphic readathon. I read a bunch of graphic novels. Oh yeah, some of these I probably have to hold up, but I'm not going to because I'm lazy. I'm just talking through my Goodreads list. Most of these ones, though, came from the library, so I couldn't hold them up anyway. So the first one I read was Anyas Ghost by, who is it by? Vera Brosgol. This was like kind of an interesting story, more teenagery than I would have expected. Vaguely from memory, I thought it was interesting, but I didn't think it was amazing. I thought it would be more emotional than it actually was. I thought that it would actually follow a younger girl rather than a teenage girl, and I don't know why. I think I would have liked that better, but that's what I think. Then I read volume 2 of the Weinstein Series by Brandon Sanderson. So this is a graphic novel series that Brandon Sanderson's been working on. To be honest, and Brandon Sanderson is one of my favorite authors, but I don't think his work translates particularly well to the graphic novel format. The imagery, even though the artists change and I think I like the art style better, I just think the whole concept doesn't fit well to graphic representation. A lot of the pictures are meaningless. The story is very hard to follow. Like, it's epic and twisty, like of course a Brandon Sanderson story would be, but it's so much harder to follow, and you don't get that same kind of inner dialogue that most of Brandon Sanderson's books have. And I think that the story just can't really be told without that. So, a bit disappointing. Then I read the 4th and 5th books in the Serenity graphic novel series. I honestly don't remember what I thought about it. No, I think I do. I remember that these ones actually started to have a bit more of a story, because I believe I felt like one was just reiterating what happened in the TV series, and it was nice to be back with characters, but like not amazing. 2 went into the backstory of, what's his name, the priest guy. Anyway, went into his backstory, which was great. It was amazing. 3 again was kind of like not much happening, just a standard mission, a bit boring. But 4 and 5, from memory, my memory is not good. From memory though, actually started telling a bit of a new story, and it was really interesting. I also read volume 2 of Orange, which is by Ichigo Takano. I did think that volume 2 was definitely not as good as volume 1. All of volume 1, I was kind of waiting for something amazing to be revealed, and it never quite happened. So Orange is a story where this girl starts receiving letters from her future self telling her about their friend and how they need to help their friend out. It's a really emotional story. I think I cried in the first book, and I was very concerned about this friend. In the second book, it kind of mumbles along, comes to a conclusion. It's okay. It's a great story of friendship. Definitely recommend volume 1. Volume 2, I mean, after you read volume 1, you're going to need volume 2 for closure, but it's volume 1 that's really great. Then I probably should show this one. Wait, I have it somewhere here. Will that make everything collapse? Probably. Then I read this Maui and Other Maori Legends graphic novel by Peter Gossage. So this is like a classic book that children in New Zealand would have read. Like the story of, the story of how Maui caught the sun. Classic. Where is this picture? This picture, like, I will remember this forever from my childhood. It's just got so many great stories about Maui, and I really enjoyed reading it. Especially because the art is just beautiful. How much? Oh my god, so much footage already. Let's get going. Okay, then also at the start of November, I remember I was going to do Nonfiction November. I kind of did it. I got a bunch of audiobooks mainly out of the library. I think I had some physical books too, but those just did not happen. But I had some audiobooks I got from the library. Most of them were just ones that the library had available, which tend to be not very good ones. But firstly, I read Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. That's probably not how you say it. This book was interesting. It wasn't what I was thinking it would be at all. I thought it would be much more practical. It was basically a lot of psychological ideas about people's biases, but it did say that they found that teaching people about their biases didn't necessarily stop them from being biased. So there was very little practical use. A lot of these psychological ideas I've already studied in the past. So I think it's a really interesting book if you've never been exposed to any of those ideas. But for me, it was a bit slow and just lacking that kind of practical application. I also started reading a book called 100 Ways to Simplify Your Life by Joyce Meyer, because I thought, you know, look, I like simplifying my life. I'll do that. Unfortunately, the first step was about God. And I thought, you know what? I'm not Christian, but I'm also not prejudiced against Christians. Like, I can deal with a bit of God talk in order to get the ideas about how to simplify my life. That's okay. And then the second idea was about God, and the third, and the fourth. And at the 10th one, I said, no, I can't do this anymore. So I stopped reading it. I don't really even know for a Christian whether you would get anything out of it. But basically it just didn't align with my beliefs at all and wasn't what I was expecting. So we DNF'd that. I also read all or most of a book called 1 Year to an Organized Life, From Your Closets to Your Finances. This week-by-week guide to getting completely organized for good. Now this book was hardcore organization, like Marie Kondo, but taken further. And that's cool. I'm 100% into that kind of organization. It's something I do for fun when I'm not being lazy. But I think the problem I have with this book is it is designed to be read like week by week and actually as you work through your house. And I wasn't doing that. I was just listening to it on the audiobook on my commute. So it's possible I'll pick this up again at some point. I will say I do remember thinking that the author must be incredibly privileged, because some of the things she said were just ridiculous expectations for normal people. But you know, that's some people's life experience. I didn't let it bother me too much. I also read a book called You Can Read Anyone. I don't know why I picked this one up. It looked vaguely interesting. I thought it might teach me a little bit more about interacting with people, but it didn't really. It had this whole theory about people being either like more audio or more visual, and you being able to tell from the words they used, and I thought it was an amazing theory, like that they would use more like word. It was an interesting theory, but then when I tried to apply it in real life, I realized it was bullshit. So that was disappointing. Basically, it wasn't that great. That was by David Lieberman. If I didn't mention, I'll put it up somewhere here anyway. Well, I'm not really leaving space for it, am I? Too bad. So those were the non-fiction books I read. Not that many, really, and they're all audiobooks, so pretty much failed at non-fiction November, but that's all good. Also, I forgot to mention one graphic novel that I read during this time period, and that was Volume 3 of Monstrous. Now, Monstrous, I've been talking too long, but I do want to talk about this briefly. I love Monstrous. The art is beautiful. The concepts are beautiful. The cats with the multiple tails that are necromancers, they're amazing. I love them. But so many of the secondary characters are these women, and so many of them are the same-ish, and I can't tell them apart. And so when something happens in the story, I don't really know who's doing it, and I get very confused. All these women seem to have these different conspiracies that they're working on, and I don't know who they are, so I don't know what their motivations are, and it's just, I want to like it more than I do. I love the characters, the people who are like half animals, and the pirates. There's just so many cool concepts, and the art is beautiful, and like the demon that's inside her, because if you don't know what Monstrous is about, well, neither do I, but basically it's about this girl who is half human, half like these people who are animal and human, and the people who are animal and human are part human and part gods or something. It's a complicated world, which is why it makes it very confusing, but I love it. She ends up getting like possessed by this demon thing that sometimes comes out and eats everybody. And she only has one arm. It comes out like her missing arm. It's the art. The art is so beautiful, but I don't know what's happening. Of course, I will continue to read the series because I just want to see all the pretty pictures. And maybe at some point I'll go back and read the whole thing, and maybe I'll be able to figure out what's going on. That would be cool. Okay, so I also read Two Dark Reigns, which is the latest book in the Three Dark Crowns series by Kendara Blake. To be honest, at this point, I can't really remember what happened, but I know that I really loved it. The problem with this series is that there's so many different threads and they're all interwoven, and so there's so much to remember. And it's fine, like going into the third book, it's going to be 4 books in the series. I think going into the third book, I was like, oh, I don't know if I remember everything, but I'll just read it anyway. And pretty quickly, I did remember what was going on, but it's been like a month since I read it, and I've forgotten. But I love how everything twists together. I love how everything that happens is unexpected. If you don't know about the series, like, what are you doing? But it follows these 3 queens who each have different magical powers and are associated with different factions of this kind of witchy island. And then on their 16th birthday, they're expected to fight to the death, with the winner becoming the queen. By the 3rd book, like, that's not where we're at all. So much has happened. It really is quite a good series. I did originally find the writing style a little bit of a struggle, but now I'm okay with it. As I said, it's really hard to keep track of all the characters, but the payoff is totally worth it. Oh no! I also read Vengeful by V.E. Schwab in this period, and honestly, if I have to talk about it now, this video is already way too long, so I'm not going to talk about it. Maybe I'll do a separate review video for it. Overall, I loved it. I want this series to be a TV show or a movie. I loved it, but there were a few things that were disappointing, which I guess I will talk about at a different time, but the characters were amazing. So the only two I haven't mentioned now is the last two, which is The Raven Boys and the Dream Thieves by Maggie Stiefvater. So this is the first two books of the Raven Cycle. I have read the Raven Cycle before, but I heard that the audiobooks were really good, and so I decided to re-listen to the series, and I'm really glad I did. I read the first two books at the end of the year, and I've read the last two books the start of this year. And I mean, spoilers for my January wrap-up, but I love this series so much, maybe even more than I remember now that I know all the stuff. I feel like I could just go back to this world anytime and be so happy. Anyway, I have a shit ton of footage, so this video is likely to be way too long, so I should wrap it up quickly. Anyway, hopefully I'm going to be on booktube a bit more now. As I said, I'm not working, so I should have plenty of time, although I found that having more time doesn't mean you have more motivation. Anyway, hopefully I will see you again soon. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.